Okay, so hopefully you've done that for year 2 and year 3, and if so, hopefully you got the same figures to what I have on the screen there. So for each year, I then took the year 2 figures, and for each quarter, divided them by their seasonal index to get those values there. What this means then is if we have a look at this graph, this is giving us a visual representation of what happened. What we've done though, first of all, is we've called summer of year 1, quarter 1, autumn of year 1, quarter 2, 3, 4. So spring of year 1 would be quarter 4, and then quarter 5 is summer of year 2. So just so you understand what that scale is down the bottom. But what we can see is that blue line originally was the sales figures that existed. So you can see here that that's really like choppy and changing up and down. We've got those really big troughs happening in spring. So if we look back at that table over here, these spring values were really low, especially compared to winter right next to them. But when we've deseasonalized the data, which is that red line, we can actually see that the trend is a lot more balanced. So they are making a real similar amount of profit per year. But I think you might agree with me too that there is a real slight increase from year to year, that it is trending up just ever so slightly there as well. So it's really then doing this seasonality process and deseasonalizing the data allows us to see that upwards trend, and so it removes that seasonality that looks really irregular and shows us this underlying pattern. Okay. If we scroll on down now, those questions required us having the seasonal indices to begin with. But what we actually might need to do as well is calculate the seasonal indices for ourselves. And so in order to calculate the indices ourselves, we need to follow this formula here, in which we need to take the seasonal value and then divide it by the seasonal average. So to calculate the seasonal indices for Mickey's shop based on last year, so these were our year 1 figures. We've got 920 for summer, 1085 for autumn, etc., etc. We first of all need to find the average for that season. So remember, to find an average, we need to add up all the values and then divide it by the number of values. So our average here is 920 plus 1085 plus 1241 plus 446, and we divide that there by 4 because we've got 4 values present. So let me just pop that in the calculator for us. And if we do that, then we get an average here of 923. Now, for us to work out the seasonal index, for each quarter, we need to take that quarterly value and then divide it by the average. So for summer, I need to take that value of 920 and divide it by 923. Now, it doesn't tell us how many decimal places to work with here. Let's write these to 3 decimal places. So go 920 divided by 923, and to 3 decimal places, that will give us 0.997. So in this little table that I've got down here, I'm going to type in 0.997. If I did the same thing for autumn now, I'll set up that fraction. I need to take 1085, which were my autumn sales, and divide that by the average then for the whole year. So divide that by 923. And so for autumn, to 3 decimal places, I would get 1.176 being my index in here. Again, same process for winter, 1241 divided by 923, and I get 1.345. And lastly, spring, 446 over 923, and I get 0.483. So what I've done there is I have created the seasonal indices just for that 1 year of data, which these were given to us in our last question, although when we had them before, they were just given to 2 decimal places. But as you can see, we can actually find them for ourselves. Now, what gets a little bit trickier though is if we've got more data, rather than finding the index for each year, what we can find is that average index for that time period. But in order for us to do that, we need to find the index for each year first and then find the averages of them all. So that would give us a better, stronger seasonal index to use because that index is then the average of more years worth of data. So it's more valuable for us in this context. So the year one is the same as just before, and we already worked them out. So I'm actually going to copy and paste these down for us because we've already got the indices for year one. If I need to find the indices for year two now, remember I need to find the average for year two first. So I'm going to take 1,035 plus 1,180 plus 1,356 plus 541, and I'm going to divide that by 4. And in that case, let me open up the calculator. 1,035. My average for year two is $1,028 there. Now, to work out my seasonal indices for each quarter, for seasonal index of summer in year two, I need to take that summer value of 1,035 and then divide it by 1,028 because that was the seasonal index then for sorry, that was the average value for that year two. So 1,035 by 1,028, which gives me 1.007. Now, like before, I am going to pause the video here. I want you to pause the video as well, and I want you to work out the rest of the seasonal indices for the second year, and then I want you to repeat the process for year three. So I want you to take a moment and find all of those figures for me. So press pause now. Okay, so hopefully you worked them out for yourself. I have added some extra working out here. So I worked out the average for year three by adding up these values here. So 1299 plus 1324 plus 1450 plus 659 all divided by 4, which gave me 1183 being the average value for that third year. And then to work out the seasonal index for the summer of year three, I took that summer value of 1299, divided that by 1183, that gave me 1.098. And I've done the same thing for each quarter then in the rest of that year three. So hopefully you did that as well, and you can check your answers for me there. Now, our final step then is to find the seasonal indices for the 3 years. What we have in this table is we have the seasonal indices for each quarter for each year. And so for us to get the indices for the 3 years, we need to get the average for each quarter. So what that's meaning then is that my seasonal index for summer comes from taking that 0.997 plus 1.007 plus 1.098 and dividing that there by 3. So again, if I pop this in my calculator, I get 1.034 there as my seasonal index for summer. And let's just round these to 2 decimal places for us. So I'm going to press stop inking and put 1.03. I would then need to do the same thing for autumn. So 1.176 plus 1.148 plus 1.119, divide that by 3, and I get 1.15 then to 2 decimal places. Winter, I get 1.30 because it's 1.29666, so 1.30. And finally, spring now 0.483 plus 0.526 plus 0.57. I get 0.52. So we have now created those seasonal indices based on those 3 yearly averages. And if you did want to look back at the notes that we did before, we were trying to de-seasonalize this data. These seasonal indices that we've just found were the same numbers we were working with before. So that there is the concepts that you need to be exploring in 6D.